BAM is a communications agency that believes stories move the world. We move stories forward for technology-driven brands that challenge, change, and create entire industries. Today we have Ronda Scott, Head of Marketing and Communications at General Catalyst on the show. Ronda has extensive experience developing and leading PR and digital marketing campaigns. She has public relations experience both in-house and agency side, from small brands and startups to Fortune 500 companies and internationally recognized IP. Let's dive in.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Dear BAM, the podcast for PR, content, and marketing folks such as yourself. I'm glad everyone's here today. We got a lot of questions, and we have the wonderful Ronda helping us out today. Thanks for being here, Ronda.
Thank you for having me.
We got a lot of questions, Ronda.
Yeah, some meaty questions here.
Let's get in here. Here we go. First one. Dear BAM, I'm in one of those great situations where my startup, I'm the director of marketing, by the way, recently closed a huge round of funding, and the resources for marketing are honestly going to be plentiful. How nice. Our startup is very niche and B2B, and we are starting at ground zero in terms of marketing. I just got here a month ago for context and was brought on with this funding. Do you have a way to assess the needs and priorities of a company, like a 360? I haven't started from ground zero before, and I don't want to miss a clear need.
Yes, I think before we can answer this question, I think we need to make a couple of assumptions, because I was trying to suss out where this company was, what stage this company was at. So there's this massive funding round, or a huge funding round, right? But then at the same time, just bringing in functional leads like a head of marketing. So that's a little earlier.
Yeah, I wonder what huge is. So, it could be 20 million, which in VC terms is like, man, that's not, not catastrophically huge.
I think to answer the question, I'm going to make a couple of assumptions here. Let's say it's Series A, because oftentimes the Series A is when you might bring in a head of marketing, and that you already have a product in the wild. And for me, the first thing that I would do if I were landing in this situation and I'm the first person in the door marketing wise, is you've just raised a large funding round. And in order to do that, your founder and CEO, your leadership team were out there pitching. And so they've got a pitch deck, and that pitch deck, you want to get your hands on that pitch deck. You want to spend some time with it. And then you want to get your product leader and your business leader to walk you through that pitch deck. And that pitch deck's going to have a bunch of information in there that's going to kind of help you think, help you understand how the company's thinking about the market, about the product roadmap, about the opportunities ahead, right? Because they've just spent a bunch of time laying this out for investors. Some of the things that might be in there that could be interesting to you is, again, that product roadmap, what's coming down the pike for the next 12, 18, 24 months. There might be some information in there if you have a product in the wild about your current CAC and your estimated LTV. These are things that are, kind of going to help you calibrate your spend marketing wise. And kind of between the two sides, the product roadmap and that pitch deck, you should have a good understanding of your organization's near-term goals. And from there, I think you just get granular, right? I would want to assess, how marketing savvy is my exec team? How much have they thought about this?
That was the next thing I was going to say. Do the interviews to see what's the bench of understanding that you're getting into. And that's going to be probably vast.
Yeah, absolutely. Has your customer been defined? Have your competitors been defined? Some of that'll probably be in that pitch deck, but how deep does that go? Same for your end user, who's buying the technology and who's using the technology. In the B2B world, those can be two different audiences. How are you addressing those audiences, if at all? At this point, you haven't had a marketing person on the ground. So I don't know if you actually have anything to learn from any previous ad campaigns or outreach or beta programs. You might not have anything to learn from there, but you want to figure out that's your 360, right? What's been done, what's going on right now, what the expectations are in the marketing literacy of your exec team, and what assets do you have to work with going forward, product launches, things like that.
I like the marketing literacy. Yes, yes. This has happened to us before, for example, which I would stress for this writer, when you see some of the stats or you see some of the things in the deck, to not assume that was placed there by any of the founders. Get in there deeper. Ask and go, oh, so how did you guys derive at this? Where did this information came? Because you may in fact find out some other person external even to the company, pulled it together, thought it looked good, they put it in there, etc. And I'm not saying they're not going to know the numbers or what that means. It just might mean that there was previous people or resources that helped get the company where it was. So now you're this first internal full-time hire is what we understand, but there may have been influences, input from others before, maybe in a freelance capacity or just as a consultant capacity or something, even though this person's saying, oh, we're starting from ground zero. But really, is that, have they heard elsewise or have they talked to anyone else? So in addition to what you're saying is like the marketing literacy is, well, who else has taught you so far? Where does that come from? And then you can assess and go, oh, okay, yep, I agree with that. Those are like sound marketing principles. Or, ooh, there's been some misinformation or misguidance here. And now you got to like start from that point.
Right.
That's something I would be definitely looking at.
Yeah, for sure. And I would say, once the 360 is that those interviews and kind of looking at all of the information in front of you and looking at it through a marketing lens, that's really where the fun starts, right? You were hired as the first person on the ground. So you're saying you're worried about missing a clear need for the company. The cool thing is you get to define kind of what those marketing needs are, because you're the first person in the door. And so looking at the landscape of, again, where you are today, what the expectations are, what your LTV and your CAC are maybe are or projected to be, so you can kind of figure out what your spend is, and then you get to decide what building blocks to put in place first to kind of start to build out that marketing muscle for the organization.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be worried too much about what missing on an element. I don't think you will.
Yeah, and you'll figure it out more and more as you get down in the path of this. Another tip I'd recommend, because I've seen this before and I so highly recommend this, is you might interview a couple salespeople or talk to like the director of sales, let's say, and they're like, oh yeah, and this is who we're after and this is what we do. And you're like, interesting. And then when you actually see a pitch demoed, you'll learn other things. So don't just take the word of what the salespeople say or what they define. Go on some ride-alongs if you can, if you will, to hear how they pitch the company and how they pitch that seller. I would do that to the nth degree, because then you're really going to know how the potential consumer or the potential client is receiving the information, what gaps clearly are missing, and all that's probably going to be the richest area for you to find.
Yeah, and I think sales and marketing are often frenemies, right? I mean, you end up if you're in a marketing role, you may if the sales numbers get missed, the sales folks might blame the marketing folks. The marketing folks might say the sales folks aren't doing their job correctly. Like, obviously, sometimes this turns into an adversarial role, but it doesn't have to be. It's very complementary, and what the sales folks are learning out there in the field is something that you should be keenly aware of and learning from, and adjusting your programmatic activity to take advantage of. If I were landing and there already was a sales, oftentimes there's not. Oftentimes there'll be a marketing muscle brought in, and then it'll be self-serve for a while, and then once you start to go after larger accounts, then you start to bring salespeople in. But if you do have a salesperson there that predates you, spend time with them, learn from them. They know what's working and what's not for the particular customer they've been going after right today. And your job's probably going to be to broaden that customer base and do more. And so you guys want to be in lockstep. It doesn't have to be adversarial. It can be quite complementary.
Yes, definitely. Next question we have, Rhonda. Dear Banff, do you have any recommendations for narrowing in on who should speak when there is a crisis? I'm at a startup with a few hundred employees and an executive team of about 8 or so that includes the co-founders, the CTO, the head of product, chief legal, and so on. As we're planning for crisis situations, I'm finding that the executive team members all seem to want to weigh in or, quote, be the face of the company. It's odd. I don't know if some of these, quote unquote, rescue complexes are at stake or what. What do you suggest? Have you seen this before, Rhonda, where everyone's like, oh, wait. I want to talk. Put me out there.
Pick me to be the face of the crisis? No.
This is weird.
So it is very weird. I don't think that many people usually put their hand up for this. But what I would say is it depends on the crisis, right? So if there are all kinds of crises that you need to prepare for, and there's a bunch of different audiences and constituencies who you'll be talking to, whether it's employees, investors, customers, the media, and regulators, right? There are a bunch of different folks that you're going to be in front of. That will dictate who's doing the talking, right? And so when I think about earlier this year when COVID really started to break and no one knew what was going to happen, no one knew the impact of the virus, no one knew the impact on our economy, no one knew if we were going to ever go back to the office, or in the beginning we didn't even know, should we be in the office, should we not be in the office, how do we make these decisions? And I'd say, using that as an example, like if it's internal communications, it's absolutely your CEO. Your CEO's role is to define reality and give hope. And I'm stealing that line from Ken Chenault. He uses that quite a bit. And it's you define reality like, hey, there's this virus. We don't know much about it. There's times we're uncertain, but if we're diligent, we'll make it through to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
It's your CEO's role, your founder or your CEO's role to deliver that message internally, and then maybe hand the mic over to the head of HR who's going to talk to you tactically about how it's going to take place, how you're going to move to work from home, and how you're going to run meetings, and how you're going to stay connected while everyone's been dispersed to their own home offices, right? And that's your internal communications. Externally, again, in COVID, I think it's your CEO or founder who's speaking to your customer base if you have one. But if it's something different, like for example, if it's rumors or leaks about a funding or about a pending layoff, because it's also timely, lots of layoffs happened earlier this year. It's not your CEO that you put in front of the media who's calling up and saying, hey, I heard you're going to lay off 20% of your workforce, or I heard you were about to land a funding and it fell through. It's your comms lead who takes that call, usually.
Mm-hmm.
And then, if you have all these people who are super eager to get involved, you could tap them, for example, if you have a data breach or a service outage, then your CTO is probably the right person to talk externally, or your head of product, talk externally and internally about what went wrong, how you're going to mitigate it in the future. But there are just some obvious roles.
Yeah, I completely agree with this. And I think for this person, there's a little bit of making sure everyone has a little say. And with so many potential crises that can happen, you just delineate lanes. Great. CEO speaks on A, B, and C. CTO, you're on D, E, F, and comms person, you're on G, F, G, whatever else. So
right.
I think you could just do that.
Chief legal officer potentially in front, like again, on regulators or situations like that. But otherwise, I don't know about you. Have you seen the CLO or compliance officers get in front of media?
No.
That one's a little unusual, but
that is, and usually they're in the backdrop to make sure you're not saying
exactly
illegal, right? So interesting, but again, I think you can kill two birds with one stone with okay. Let's even over imagine the potential issues or situations, and then put it on the chart who's doing what, and then you got that.
And then I would also say that the other criteria is, has this person had the appropriate training for this role?
Oh, well, that's a whole other topic. Mm-hmm.
Appreciate everyone's enthusiasm. Here are the roles as you've defined it as the head of comms, because this is your responsibility ultimately.
That's right.
And then making sure that you've articulated the kind of training and experience that they need to be able to go ahead and take on that role should a crisis arise.
Mm-hmm.
Some people will put that work in and some people won't. So that might also help you sift through.
Damn straight. Yep. This is definitely not, you raised your hand, so you're in. No.
Your co-ed kickball team, that's when you take those volunteers. Crisis communication, no.
Exactly. Crisis comms, not kickball. So make sure you got that. All right. Next question here. Dear Bam, when do you recommend startups to consider taking on any external help from other agencies? I've worked with several agencies over the last 10 years of my career, and now I'm a one-woman band at a Series A funded company that is deeply B2B focused and mostly filled with dev and engineer types. Is there a checklist or something I could present or use? I'm struggling because I've always been at places that already had working relationships with other external resources.
Yeah. So, I think you actually have a rubric for this, right?
I did, Ronda. I did create one. I have a little quiz. I do.
Yeah, so I think that'd be a wonderful thing to share. But in addition, I think there are two things that I kind of think about when I'm talking to early stage startups. And oftentimes they're asking me, when do I make my first hire? When do I bring on my first agency? And I'm talking to founders, and I was like, your time is valuable. And it's the same thing is true for an internal head of comms. There's only so many hours in the day. And there are only so many things you can have an expert level of understanding of.
Very true.
Yeah. And so the first is there's so many hours in the day. If you're looking at your next 12 months and you're like, hey, I actually really I need to build an executive profile for my CEO. I need to really get in there and insert us into market trend coverage. But that you say you're direct to consumer and you want to be in part of that market trend coverage, that's a full-time job. So if you also need legs on the ground to do product roundups and to get yourself into gift guides and consumer pubs, it's only so many hours in the day. Look at that and what is your strength? If your strength is corp comm, take that and hire yourself an agency or a consultant who knows the space that you're in and hand off that part of the job. There's only so many places you can be an expert, right? So you might be a B2B startup and you might be really good at analyst relations. Like you understand how to get your company in front of Gartner and into their magic quadrant and all of those things. But you're not so technical that you can do dev relations, and you actually have to have someone that can explain to the devs like what you're building, how you're building it, and how they can engage with it. Find somebody that can help you with dev relations. So really it's like, how much time do you have? Can you accomplish everything you need to accomplish? If not, time to bring some on. If your role is expanded and you're ace at corporate communications and you're ace at analyst relations, but say dev is not your strong suit, time to bring someone on. But I think you probably have more detailed kind of decision tree beyond that.
Oh, yeah, we do. And too bad this isn't visual because then I could be sharing it. But that reminds me of something we could put certainly on like our blog as a repost. And it's like a little quiz format that we have. The one thing I'd recommend for this person is to first, especially because they're new, make sure you have the priorities listed down, even better if in order, from, let's say, the founder, co-founders, or executive team. Okay, these are in the next 12, 24 months, these are the 5 priorities. Okay, great. One includes executive profiles. Another includes internal comms. I'm making these up. Another includes top tier media coverage. Another includes analyst relations. Okay, so whatever that mixture is, because then you know what the desired results are. Then you can come to the table and say, okay, of that entire list you have, that's a lot. Here's what is feasible time-wise and my expertise-wise. You obviously hired me. You're already in the door, this person, this writer. You're already in the door. So it's okay. I would hope they would feel like okay with saying like, hey, this, I absolutely got to what you're saying, Ronda. Like on analyst relations, I got that done. I will own. This other area, not as strong. Or I can handle these 3 other things. This is an additional half of a job. I cannot get to this. So you're coming to the table with time and expertise. And obviously people who have expertise can do it in less time. So there's that argument too. So then you can present that and say from a time perspective, from an expert's perspective, this is what additionally will be needed to accomplish all these things. Now, if the response is, oh, no, we can't be spending 20K over a month over on that or this or that. Okay, great. Well, then what of the list do you want to scratch off? Because we're not going to get to that.
Right.
That helps this conversation so easily. Because it's like, okay, great. Well, then let's scratch the bottom 2 things that are on the list because those are the lowest priority. And well, we can't get that all accomplished. So.
Right. It's just being honest about that and being, and honest about like what you can accomplish, what your strengths are. And then when you do call in the reinforcements, what more you'll be able to accomplish. And then quantifying that in terms of return on investment. If we spend this much, here's where I expect us to be at the end of the year.
Yes, I love it. I think we tied a bow on this one. The next question, similar, but different. Okay. Dear Banff, my question is around consolidating resources. My comms and marketing team already is a team of 10, and we now have 6 agencies that are helping us with SEO, comms in 3 key markets, panels and award submissions, and then another just for the CEO surrounding his thought leadership. I inherited this giant mess of resources, and now having been in my role for 6 months, I can easily spot the overspending and inefficiencies. How can I think about consolidating resources? Can one team do everything, as in one agency, or should I try to go from 6 to say 2? Or is this just the life I now live as a marketing head of an ever complex startup?
Oh, don't accept the bloat.
Yeah, I'd say absolutely not.
So I think this actually goes back to a comment that you made earlier, which is, when you first start a job, you're given a bunch of resources and you don't really know how those things came about. So it's very likely that someone who didn't have great marketing literacy, potentially, that sounds more negative than I mean it to be, but in a startup situation, oftentimes someone's making a decision to bring on an agency for SEO over here because that's what's important today, right? 3 months from then, suddenly it's like, oh no, we've been left off this awards list. How do we get in front of these awards? And then let's go get that agency. And the one thing I can say for sure is it sounds like this person, the writer, she's a senior, he or she is a senior marketing person. And I have to believe they were brought in to head up this quote unquote giant mess precisely because they have the experience to identify those inefficiencies and to make the changes needed to improve the situation.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at this and I was like, well, when you have somebody focused that's on CEO thought leadership and couldn't also do panels and award submissions, like thought leadership goes kind of hand in hand with speaking engagements. And speaking engagements and potentially also award submissions, there are definitely some efficiencies here. So, I mean, first, it goes back to, I think we've said this over and over, which is define what your actual needs are over the next 12 to 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next step I would take is look internally. Like determine the talent you have on your team of 10. And likely as it's expanded to 10 people, there's been people who've been brought on who can step into some of these responsibilities. Somebody who comes with SEO experience or someone who is really great at writing thought leadership pieces, right? Like you probably have some of this talent internally. From there, you do the agency review, right? And is it true that you probably need 3 agencies and an SEO agency and panels and award submissions? No, probably not.
Yeah.
But first I would look internally. There's probably people who could take on some of those responsibilities. There's probably some people who are eager to grow into those areas. And then I would look externally. And then the last thing I would say is don't forget to delegate. You have really great people. You don't need to be managing 10 people and their performance and career trajectories and all of these agencies.
Yeah, exactly.
It might be time for some of those folks internally to also take on some of those, some of the agency management responsibilities.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I completely agree, Rhonda. Don't allow the bloat. Oh, we've seen this before. And it just happens, especially at really, really big companies. And there's just so many people and there's so many legacy. They've been around for this many years and the CEO knows the CEO of that agency. I mean, I've seen that all up and down and all around. So there's just that. And if you are indeed going to get the power to consolidate, run with that for sure. Once you really know the lay of the land. I know the person said, 6 months and they are overseeing, they can see the overspending, they can see the inefficiency. So it sounds like you've got enough data here to now be making some moves.
Yeah, and just need to feel the confidence of it sounds like this question could be asked from someone who's stepped into the size of a leadership role, maybe for the first time, and sort of feeling a little bit uncertain about like, hey, here's what I feel and here's what I see and here's what I know, but do I really want to act on it? And it's yes.
Yeah.
You were hired for a reason because you've got the background and the experience. And and as long as you come up with a plan and you feel like it's defensible,
do it.
Go for it. Yeah.
Do it, writer. Okay. Rhonda, our last question for the day. Dear Banff, when is it too early, if at all, to prep for a crisis plan? One of our new clients asked me and insisted on knowing what the average time a startup has been around or how many employees it has to determine this. I like to think that it is never too early, but what have you seen average-wise? When there are more than 20 employees or more than one big enterprise client, what would you say?
Oh, we have to love our metrics-driven clients.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, we all know the answer to this. It's never too early.
That's right.
And I think this year has put us through the ringer. And we've had pandemics, we've had protests, we've had economic stressors. And my fingers are crossed that the fates will help us through the end of the year.
Yeah, seriously.
But, it's been a crazy year. And I think the one thing, at General Catalyst, we have a couple hundred portfolio companies and we invest everywhere from the seed stage all the way up to large growth rounds. And so the large growth round companies, they have really strong, solid, amazing PR teams. They were prepared for this. And then at the smaller end, people were at varying degrees prepared. And I can say that, having done some of the work, it made the process a little bit less stressful, right? When COVID first hit to deal with it. So companies that were caught flat-footed, maybe they've been really focused on product, they've been really focused on launch, go to market, different areas. This just didn't come up the priority list. It made it that much more difficult for them to navigate when COVID hit. And so it's never too early. I think as soon as you have employees, you have to understand how to effectively communicate to them in a variety of situations. As soon as you roll out a product, you've got people dependent on you. You have to know how to talk to those folks when you have a breach, an outage, you're changing your pricing structure. There's all different things that you need to be prepared for. So it's never too early. And so I don't know. Backing all of that up is I can't say that there was an average, but what I can say is the folks who had put a little elbow grease in to be prepared for the things they could anticipate. No one anticipated a global pandemic, but for the things that they could participate in, they were much more prepared to handle the pandemic situation.
Exactly. This one is frustrating just because it's kind of like, oh, you have a house, but you don't want to buy the insurance for the house. But you have a house. You have a house. Yes, you do. But you don't want to buy the insurance. So a lot of times
you'll buy the insurance like in the average, like a house lasts for 50 years. So maybe you'll start, on average. So at year 49, you'll buy the insurance.
Yeah. Like it's the same approach. It's the same approach. You don't want this to happen. Of course, it doesn't mean it's going to usher it in. It's just there. So you're not on the flat foot, like you're saying. In fact, just as a knowledge point, I had a call for a company just that I was mentoring, and they have 4 employees, dealing with a crisis on something they posted on Instagram. 4. They didn't even close the seed round. Now they have a big input or big imprint into a certain community they're working with. But the point is, like, you wouldn't have anticipated that. You have 4 employees. 2 of them are co-founders. There was a big problem. Again, they were scrambling because they had planned nothing in anticipation. So
yeah, it's never too early.
It's never too early. Get on it.
Yeah, and I hope your client is okay with that without a specific metric, because
the metric should be: do you have a company? Then you have a crisis plan.
Right.
Do you not have a company? Then you don't need one. Oh, you have one? There you go. That's very binary. I think that'll help.
Yeah.
Oh, good luck, writer. Okay, Ronda, we have solved everything for this week. Just this week, though. So there will be more.
That was fun.
This was fun. Thank you for being on. I know you've got hundreds of portfolio companies you're dealing with, so we so appreciate the time. It's great having a BAMF like you on here. And this was great. And thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Dear BAMF, the advice podcast for PR and marketing pros like you. Our show is created by BAMF, a PR and marketing agency headquartered in San Diego and New York City. The music you're enjoying today was composed by Tiffany Dizon, produced by Daniel Kessner, and played by San Diego Symphony's Art of Aman. Thank you to our podcast production team at Citizen Recording. If you have a tough PR and marketing question you'd like us to answer, please write to us at bamtheagency.com/Dear BAMF. Don't forget the F. We'll be back next Monday with another episode of Dear BAMF. Until then,